to Adventures with ADHD, where I shine the spotlight on fabulous neurodivergent folk who come along and share their stories with us. So thank you, Tig Savage, for being here today.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, brilliant. It's lovely. I've met you before, but I'm going to find out all sorts about you today because you've agreed to come along and share a bit of your story. So great to have you. Tig, tell us a bit about where you're from and what it is you do.
Well, I grew up in Sussex, in Shoreham. I was born in London, but I don't remember that. So, yeah, I grew up in Sussex. I've lived just sort of around Sussex mostly, but I've also lived in the south of France for almost 10 years. And I never know what to say when people ask me what I do. When I was a precocious young person, I used to say, when?
Yeah.
But I've learnt it's called a portfolio career.
Yeah.
So I do a little bit of admin for an after school club. I write and very occasionally get published. I have a one-woman show, which I sometimes perform. I sing occasionally for money. I do voiceover work. Yeah, do lots of different things. I've probably forgotten a couple of strings in body harmony. That's my main thing. I have a therapy practice which I qualified last year, it's a technique called body harmony, which I'm completely in love with and totally committed to.
Great. And what is body harmony?
So body harmony is it's a hands-on therapy, but it's a really gentle touch. We call it the listening touch. We don't completely know how it works, but one of the things, so the reason I was attracted to it was because I'd had major surgery. I'd actually died twice for a few seconds on the table, and it was bowel surgery, which takes ages to recover from. And I had my then partner brought a body harmony therapist practitioner in to see me, and it was quite profound for me. Not everyone reacts the same, but for me, it was quite profound, both physically and emotionally and mentally. So that kind of started my journey like 14 years ago. And then before COVID, I started to train to become a practitioner because I loved it so much. And how it works, as I say, we don't really know. But the reason I've said all that is because I always feel like I want to validate it, because I don't think it's like an out there kind of technique. I think we just don't quite understand how it works yet. So when I connect with your body tissue and really listen, really gently, really listen in with my hands and kind of every part of my being, something happens inside of you and your body goes, oh, I'm being heard. You know, like we like to be heard with our words. I believe that there's something within the fascia and the organs and all the rest of it that has that same need. And it really seems to act as an invitation to your body to start doing whatever's necessary to become better. And within that, I have absolutely no victim blaming. So when I say become better, it means if you've got cancer and I put my hands on you, I'm not saying your cancer's going to go. I mean, it might, you know, stuff happens, but it might be that you come to terms with your diagnosis, or, you know, whatever you need, whatever's right for you in that experience. I believe body harmony is an invitation for that to happen. And I'm absolutely convinced there's proper science behind it, just because of the experience I've had myself and then the experiences I've had with clients since I've been training and qualified.
That sounds amazing. It sounds really healing.
Really healing, yeah.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and I did say to you before, I'd like to find out a bit more about that. So I will be in touch. So,
Yeah.
so this show is all about neurodivergent folks, whether they're diagnosed or not, whether they're a whole mixture of ADHD, autism, and other neurodivergencies. So tell us a bit about your journey to recognizing your neurodivergence.
Okay, so there's a quote that if my kids were here, they'd say it with me. When I was at school, very young, in my first school, infant school. So, and I moved schools when I was 7. So I would have been either 4, 5 or 6 when this happened. I was getting told off for talking again. I looked up and I said to my teacher, "Excuse me, miss, but you keep telling me off for talking, and if I'm talking, then surely someone else is talking, because I can remember even then it was like the impulse control thing. If somebody spoke to me, I had to answer, even if I knew
Yeah.
I was going to get into trouble, right? So I must be talking with someone. Why is it always me that gets told off? And she sighed and she looked at me and she said, because yours is the voice I can always hear. And that, I really look back on that as like the start of me kind of wondering, why did I stand out so much? Why was it always me? Why was I not afraid to say when something was wrong? Why was they came to me, the girls came to me when I was 11 and asked me to captain the girls' football team. I know nothing about football. I'm equally as disinterested now as I was then. I said, why are you asking me? Because we know you'll do it.
Wow.
We know you'll speak up. And there was always that sort of outside the box. And also heard someone say yesterday that we don't even see a box. I think it was a thing on Facebook. Yeah, we don't even see it. There is no box, for neurodivergence. And that, but it was Chris Packham.
Oh,
Yeah, he was
Chris, love Chris.
yeah. He was saying we're kind of needed in these difficult times because it's our kind of thinking that. So anyway, so all my life, like I never, difficult relationships, problems with drugs and alcohol, chaotic motherhood. I had 3 children, and those poor girls. I don't know how we're all so great now. Perhaps I'm being hard on myself, and it wasn't as bad as I think it was. But that's another thing, isn't it? Like all the thoughts amplified. I'm trying to slow down my speaking now because I'm aware that as soon as I get excited or passionate about something, I really start to gabble, Anyway, all of that, I've, my friends say to me, oh, you're so brave, you did this. I think, I'm not brave, I'm chaotic. That's what I've always said that. I'm not brave, I'm chaotic. And then lockdown came along, and I think this is a fairly standard story, actually. I think this has happened for a lot of people, where I was also clinically extremely vulnerable. So although I worked in at the time I was working for the railways, so I actually worked in a key, I was a key worker, but I couldn't go to work, so I was shielded, as vulnerable. So I had a lot of time to think, and a lot of time to muck about on social media and read and all the rest of it. And I started to see all this stuff about these women and late diagnosis ADHD, and it coincided with me getting a modest but reasonable inheritance. So I actually I did a bit of research. I went into hyperfocus, as I now know, and went to see one of the top guys in the country for late diagnosis of ADHD in women. I just paid for it and went and did it. And he got diagnosed, confirmed that I had combined ADHD. So that was my journey, yeah.
And how did you feel when you found out?
Vindicated. Really vindicated. I haven't medicated. I mean, because you've seen the show where I go, I'm medicated, but that's, I make it sound like a choice. It isn't really, because I have a thyroid condition, and he said that I could have some meds, but the amount of time that they would give me of not having bees in my brain would be so minimal, and he couldn't guarantee that I wouldn't lose my creativity. So it was partly choice and partly kind of like, it doesn't sound like it's really worth it. It's a bit risky.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so just
And
vindicated. And then also it furthered my research, because I was then able to find different ways to cope with my traits and ways to forgive myself.
yeah, so what are some of the ways that you cope with your ADHD?
Well, as I understand it, it's not all, but it's very primarily and strongly about the dopamine. So I chase the dopamine, but I try to find healthy ways to chase the dopamine. So when I want to do some impulsive shopping online, for example, that I can't afford, that's going to give me a buzz, I stick it all in the basket and I think about it for a couple of days, and I've actually managed to give myself a buzz from not doing it now and looking at the money that I'm not spending. It's a brain switch. It's almost easier to do than it is to explain. I did, after my surgery, when I didn't know about I knew about ADHD, the existence of, but I didn't know the relevance of it to me. I did come up with this thing that I now know is a thing, with neural pathways. So I'm a musician, okay? So I know that, like, the more I play my guitar, the more my fingers are going to know, so I don't even think, just like when I walk, you know. So I'm just going to turn the sound effects off on my phone. And I thought, well, I wonder if I could rewire my brain in any way using this idea of these neural pathways. So the first thing I did was I changed the hand that I hold my toothbrush in.
Oh yeah,
Hand that I hold my coffee mug in. I now know that that's actually like a real thing, but I just sort of thought of it, you know. So I've built on that as well since having my diagnosis. I try to, because we love change, right? If we've got ADHD, generally speaking, we kind of thrive on. I mean, I know there's that constant battle between order and chaos is amplified in us, but I do kind of quite enjoy a bit of chaos. I do enjoy when things change and things are different. So, you know, instead of ripping my room apart, my flat's really small and I've got it to sort of optimum arrangement. I can't keep reorganizing. So instead of ripping it apart, I just put different throws on the sofa. And instead of letting the kitchen pile up because I'm overwhelmed, I stop myself from that thought that there's all that washing up there. I haven't got time to do it all. I'll wash 2 things as I walk past.
brilliant.
You know, it's all small tweaks, really, but they seem to make such a big difference to my life. And now I get dopamine from walking into a clean kitchen, for example.
Love it.
Because once I
Absolutely love
start,
it.
I kind of can't stop. Yeah, I think it's the thought process. It's not the doing, is it? You know, so I'll
It's
just
the
wash 2 things. I'll just wash 2 things.
yeah,
Or maybe it's the executive dysfunction. I don't want to do that. Okay, well I'll kind of negotiate with myself like with a child, you know.
yeah.
Okay, well don't do it all then. Just you like that mug. You want to just wash that mug. As soon as I start and I get my hands into warm soapy water, which is a nice feeling, suddenly I'm washing up, you know.
I love the way that you talked about negotiating with yourself and being kind to yourself. Come on, you like that mug, rather than what you said. I'm looking at this whole pile of washing up. Oh my God, it's because that is a choice. You know, people, it's hard, but when you think differently, how about let's do 1 cup?
Yeah.
You've chosen that way. You're in the water and you're washing up.
Yeah, and if I only do that 1 cup, well, there's no shame or blame because that's all I said I was going to do anyway, and I'll just walk away and do a plate later, you know, whatever.
Yeah, and I think there's such useful information that you're sharing, because these are the things that really stress so many people out. The pile of washing up, the pile of washing on the floor.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
That's also, I think that does actually hark back a little bit to the body harmony as well, because I found that as a client and now also as a practitioner, but as a client first and foremost, it was the closest to meditation that my busy brain has ever been able to get. I find meditation almost impossible. I either can't, you know, just can't sort of fidgeting around and thinking about other things and getting stressed about what I'm going to have for tea or whatever, you know. Or I mean, best case scenario, I fall asleep, which is kind of okay. But you know, the thing that people talk about, the way they feel, the language that people use around meditation, I've never understood it. I've never connected to it. It's never happened for me. When I receive and give body harmony, that feels like what other people say when they're talking about meditation. And I think that's helped me to be calmer with all these things. So I don't just, I'll use the washing up as an example because that and the laundry are the kind of 2 biggest things in my life, in terms of ADHD traits and coping and, you know, all the rest of it. And yeah, so instead of looking at it and kind of having all these negative emotions around it, since body harmony, there's like, I know that I can just slow my breathing down, relax my jaw, all those physical things that make you feel tense. And once I've got those all aligned, then my thought process is towards whatever it is, whatever the evil task is. It's no longer an evil task. It's just a thing that needs to be done. And, you know, I kind of know that I'm going to get it done.
Yeah. And it sounds like the body harmony really helps to regulate your nervous system so that then you are able to think a bit more, less emotionally about this evil pile of washing up and like, okay, let's do 1. So I think that's a real key element there, the nervous system, because
that's
our
exactly
nervous,
what it does. That's exactly,
yeah,
first and foremost, I think one of the things we taught right at the beginning is when we work on another person, that if we are not comfortable, then they are not comfortable, because we are all connected, and we can sense each other's sort of emotions, and even if you walk into a room, you can feel if there's a tense atmosphere. That's not like a magical weird thing, it's just a fact, right?
yeah,
So if I put my hands on you and I'm not comfortable, that relates to your body. Now, I could still be a good healer and you could still get something out of it, but it's the perfection is when I'm really centered in my gravity. I've remembered to relax my jaw. I'm breathing right. My chest is open and I'm really kind of fluid and good. And that's when a really beautiful session occurs. So I afford myself the same. I try to remember. I mean, I don't do it all the time, but I try to remember to afford myself the same. We say it's good to have a morning practice. And my ADHD doesn't like a morning practice, doesn't want to be told what to do at the same time every day and for the same amount of time and the same thing. So I've got two little techniques there now. One is I've written a list of all the different things I could do, and I
yeah,
choose one,
yeah.
right? But before that, even when I didn't do it this morning, but usually most mornings now I'm getting much better at it. As soon as I wake up, I actually give myself a little body harmony session. It's
Oh,
just a reminder to myself to just start the day, and that
yeah,
not get out of bed and instantly, because we don't even realize how tight our forehead is and how tight our jaw is, and we all walk around like that most of the time. And I think that's why a lot of people turn to drugs and alcohol, because that will make you kind of like, we
absolutely.
can do
And
it ourselves without poison.
yeah, and then kind of get the dopamine in different ways. And that's
Exactly.
why this is just such profound stuff.
Mm.
I've recently stopped drinking, and I've done it in a way that I've now removed the desire to drink. And wow, I've never felt so excited about going out, about for the future. So
Yeah,
I realized all those years of alcohol binging was to either calm my brain down or to deal with feeling socially awkward. Well, now
absolutely. Yeah.
I'm not socially awkward, I'm just myself, and people can like it or not.
Yeah.
So taken that away, and the healthier ways of getting dopamine. Love it. Um, your play. I came to see you. This is how I met you, I think. In your play, what is it? Every Wrong Direction.
That's
Tell
right.
us how this came about. It's a brilliant play, by the way.
Thank you. How it came about. So growing up in the 70s, with divorced parents, I mean, these days it's quite common, but then it wasn't. And I really felt it. I felt, every Father's Day sitting at the back of the room reading a book while they made cards for their dads, kind of thing, And I know it's dealt with very differently nowadays because it's more common, but yeah, that was kind of my experience. And people, and I, kids at school say, well, I haven't got a dad. What do you mean you haven't got a dad? Everyone's got a dad, well, yeah, I've got a dad, but I don't know where he is, So I grew up really feeling that. And I used to make all my wishes to like birthday candles, and if I thought I seen a shooting star, which was generally an aeroplane at night, but whatever, any wish as a child, I'd wish to find my dad. And when I was 35, my mum called me up, said she found him using the internet, because she took up the internet very early, and was really good at Google and stuff, and she'd found him. So we got in touch, and I went off to France where he was living to get to know him. And while we spent some time together, we actually wrote a two-hander in French about our journey. It was way more musical than the thing you saw, because we're both singers. So there was a lot. It was like little introductory things of our story around songs that were relevant to us or to the story. And then when I moved back to England, I decided I wanted to tell that story. So the first act that you saw was that story. And
Yeah.
then as you know, because you've seen the show, it was only last year we received some extremely unpleasant news about him. So I wrote the second act because I didn't want to leave it there. So I'd done the first act twice before in Brighton, and it was meant to go into the Fringe, but then lockdown happened.
Yeah.
So I rewrote it. So what you saw, the first act as you saw it, is not quite exactly as it was, but it's the same story. And it's all true. And that was my journey, sort of, looking for my dad in all the wrong men, and, getting drunk and falling into bed with these older men and seeking approval from older men and all the rest of it. And I can really see it now, but obviously back then I was just living my best drunken ADHD life. And having children along the way and all the rest of it. And then, literally kind of ran away from home once I found him, to get to know him. Yeah. And then, as I say, after lockdowns and all the rest of it, I started the rewrite. And then last year, we found out that he was essentially a groomer and a paedophile. So I couldn't leave the story into that first act of, it's all how lovely that I've got to know him, and la la la. I was so angry. Obviously I wanted the world to know who this man really is, because he's actually still alive. And so I wrote the second act, and then the manager at Ironworks is a really old friend of mine. We used to be in a band together, so I talked to him about using the venue there, Ironworks, and he was really up for it. He supported me. It was a one-woman show, the first version, but he did like voices off and stuff. So he was actually in the original, and he knows all the story. He's met my dad, he knows a couple of his victims as well. So yeah, it felt really important to just tell that story, not center it around his crime or anything like that, but just drop that in, just as the full stop on it,
Yeah. I mean, so powerful. I mean, the whole play and your performance, it was captivating. I was completely engrossed. And there were highs and lows, and then the news at the end about your dad, and it was just like, wow. Everyone was like, wow. I mean, it's an amazing performance.
Thank you. I'm actually, I've got this. I've got the contact details of someone who does grants, or no, someone who writes bids, to the Arts Council for people, neurodivergent people. And it's one of those, you get those blockages of like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. And like, there's like 98% of me wants to do it, but there's a really noisy 2% of me just going, no. And that's another thing I've learned with ADHD, is actually not to fight that. Unless it's really urgent, I'm just going to ride it out, because I know she'll either come round or shut up at some point, so I'm just right. I've got plenty of other projects on. I'm doing lots of other things. So, and if I ride it out and that role no longer exists, there'll be some other kind of way, because the only way I think I could do that show again is with funding, because I think that's one of the issues about ADHD is I've always called it, and the adults around me have always called me when I was younger, arrogance. Right. Comes. And I don't think it is arrogance anymore, but I still kind of feel it, because when they date from childhood, they stick, don't they? And what I mean by that is, in this instance, for example, that show, Susie, I wrote it, I staged it, I did all the publicity for it, I did the costumes, I did the set design, I did the programs, and they were quite nice quality programs, weren't they? I didn't have a director. I did it. What I'm saying is I did it all. And even the next day, a huge great signpost that was the main thing with every wrong direction. The next day, I went and picked that, carried it, around the corner to being stored, and and the big laundry basket and all. I had a couple of friends come and help me carry stuff on that day, and someone to drive me into the theatre with the stuff on the day of performance. But that was kind of it, really. And not to undermine the loving support of my family and very close friends in listening to me rehearse and stuff like that, but in terms of how a one-woman show would normally go, I did too much. For all that, like, I know you enjoyed it and you said it was really good and everything, but I think it would have been much more polished if I hadn't have had, that's why I used the word arrogance, if I hadn't have had that kind of arrogance, if you like, but I now know it again, it's ADHD, you know, it's just, I knew I could do everything and I had all these ideas and, you know, so I did do everything, but I was exhausted.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I feel like I never want to do it again, you know, which is a shame. So if
Yeah.
I do it again, I want funding and I want a little team.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And there's an expression that always sticks with me. When I left teaching after 17 years, just because you can doesn't mean you should. So
I
just
keep
because you
saying that, yes.
can do it all, because you've got this amazing ADHD brain that's creative and clever and purposeful, but you were exhausted. So yeah, that support. And it is, what's the name of the person that helps with the funding? Because I might be someone I know as
I
well.
actually don't know their name off the top of my
Oh,
head. I put it in an email, so yeah.
yeah, so we'll put those in the notes. So I used somebody, I applied, I wasn't successful, but there's always next year. Michelle Allen is a local person that can help with those funding bids. And she's great. So you say the ideas, she does all the form filling, because that can also be a barrier, can't it? The forms to get the funding. So
I'm really good at filling out forms. If they're physical forms that have to be posted, that's my stumbling block, is posting things.
yeah.
It sounds so simple, doesn't it? To you know, someone who doesn't have that issue would just be like, "What?" There's a
I
post
know.
office round the corner from my flat. I still don't post things.
Oh, and I've got this cartridge, so it's prepaid for a printer cartridge sitting by the front door. It's been there for over 6 months, and the post box is just there. And now
Yeah.
you say it, I'm like, oh yeah, that yes, that's a whole other discussion, isn't it?
Yeah.
So absolutely amazing play. I do hope you're able to put it on again, if indeed you want to. So
With help, I'd love to. Yeah.
yeah, the help. So to finish off the interview today, what bit of advice or tips would you give to people that are either newly diagnosed or newly identified, and they're kind of realizing that they're neurodivergent?
I think I've kind of referred to them already. I think my biggest tip is about forgiveness, like
Mm.
self-forgiveness, because I think, you know, I've carried a lot of self-judgment, you know, that whole, I mean, like I say in my show over and over again in the second act when I've had my diagnosis, why am I like this? You know, and of course we now all know why I'm like this, and I use it as a joke, but it's a joke, but it's still sort of referring back to that, you know, why can't I do things like other people do? And the other thing is, of course, you know, comparison is the thief of joy. That's one of my favorite quotes. So who cares what other people do?
Yeah.
You know, you do you. Yeah. And yeah, it's just there's so many tips and things that are already out there, and I've mentioned some, you know, life hacks and stuff in the interview. So I think the most important thing would be self-forgiveness. Go easy.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and that's what I'm all about as well: self-compassion,
Yeah.
self-kindness, and
Yeah.
forgiveness, because it doesn't serve us. And it's rewiring those neural pathways to a kind of more positive inner voice, which is a massive key to freedom and peace, I think.
Get goosebumps when you say that. Rewiring those neural pathways. Essential.
Yeah. Tig, thank you so much for giving your time today. I can't wait to share this interview with everyone,
Oh,
because there's been so many golden nuggets of joy and really great tips and advice. So thank you so much.
thank you for inviting me, Susie. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.